I knew the exact moment the company was going to die. It wasn't when the stock dipped, and it wasn't when the coffee machine in the break room started leaking brown sludge that smelled like despair and burnt plastic. It was a Tuesday, 9 o'clock a.m. sharp, under the buzzing hum of fluorescent lights that give everyone in the finance department the complexion of a sickly Victorian ghost. I'm Susan. I'm 45 years old, I live in Missouri, and for the last 7 years, I have been the structural integrity of this entire organization. You know how in every disaster movie, there's that one support beam groaning under the weight of the entire collapsing building? That's me. I'm a senior financial reporting analyst, which is corporate speak for the woman who fixes everyone else's math. The problem with being the person who quietly fixes everything is that eventually, people stop realizing anything was broken in the first place. They think the quarterly reports just manifest out of the ether, pristine and compliant, like financial manna from heaven. They don't see me at 7:30 p.m. on a Friday, rewriting the vice president's pivot tables because he thinks hard-coding numbers constitutes financial modeling. They don't see the custom SQL scripts I wrote 3 years ago, scripts that hold our entire billing dashboard together with digital duct tape and prayer. So, when the VP of Finance walked in that Tuesday morning, beaming like a man who just discovered fire, I should have known something terrible was coming. He had a younger clone trailing behind him. The clone was wearing a suit that cost more than my Honda Civic, with hair so perfectly gelled it looked like it could withstand a hurricane. "Everyone, listen up," the VP bellowed, clapping his hands. The sound echoed off the beige cubicle walls. We all looked up. The data entry clerks, the junior analysts, the lifers like me with carpal tunnel braces and eyes tired from staring at Excel grids for 2 decades. "I want you to meet Tyler," the VP said, gesturing to the clone. "My son. He's fresh out of grad school, got his MBA, and he's going to be stepping in as the new director of strategic planning. He's got some fresh eyes and big ideas." Tyler stepped forward. He had that specific kind of confidence that only comes from never having had a credit card declined in your entire life. He looked around the room, his gaze sliding over the hardworking staff like we were furniture. Then, his eyes landed on me. "Hey, listen, before I tell you how I systematically dismantled this man's ego, do us a small favor and hit subscribe and maybe an upvote. It costs you $0, which is exactly what I was getting paid for the overtime I'm about to describe, and it helps the algorithm know you enjoy witnessing corporate justice." Tyler smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a shark assessing a seal. "So, you're Susan?" he asked, loud enough for the back row to hear. "I am," I said, keeping my voice neutral. I was deep in a VLOOKUP nightmare, trying to reconcile the marketing budget for the third time this week because the marketing director apparently counts on his fingers. Tyler walked over to my desk. He picked up a stack of papers, my meticulously organized reconciliation logs, and flipped through them with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "My dad told me about you," Tyler said. He chuckled, a wet, condescending sound. "He says you're the steady hand, but looking at these workflows, it seems a bit archaic, doesn't it?" The room went dead silent. The clicking of keyboards stopped. Even the breakroom fridge seemed to stop humming. "Archaic?" I repeated, slowly taking my hands off the keyboard. "Yeah," Tyler said, tossing the papers back onto my desk. They slid and scattered across the floor. He didn't apologize. "I've been looking at the org chart and the output metrics. Honest opinion, boss says you don't really contribute anything tangible. You're just maintaining. You need innovators, Susan, not caretakers." He looked around the room for approval, grinning. A few of the younger interns, terrified of the VP, let out nervous, snickering laughs. The sound scraped against my eardrums like sandpaper. I looked at the papers on the floor. Those logs represented hours of catching compliance errors that would have cost the company millions in SEC fines. I looked at the dark circles under the eyes of my team, who I shielded from the worst of upper management's incompetence every single day. Then I looked at Tyler. He was waiting for me to apologize, to scramble, to justify my existence. He wanted me to be the scared middle-aged lady who fears for her pension. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, metallic ping of a high-tension cable finally giving way. The rage didn't feel hot, it felt like liquid nitrogen. It clarified everything. I stood up, I smoothed my skirt. I looked him dead in the eye and I didn't blink. "You're right, Tyler," I said. My voice was calm, pleasant, even. "If the board thinks I don't contribute anything, then I must have been mistaken about my role here." Tyler's grin faltered for a microsecond. "Well, good. Acceptance is the first step too, so I interrupted him, smiling a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Perfect. Then the free work stops today." "Excuse me," Tyler blinked. "You heard me," I said. I sat back down, turned my chair specifically 45 degrees away from him, and opened a blank solitaire window. "I'm just a caretaker, after all. I wouldn't want to get in the way of your innovation." The VP, who had been watching from the doorway, frowned. He sensed a shift in the atmospheric pressure, but he was too arrogant to understand what it meant. "Right?" Tyler scoffed, recovering his bravado. "Well, let's get to work, people. I want to see a full audit of the reporting processes on my desk by noon. And Susan, try to look busy." He walked away, high-fiving one of the interns. The VP followed him into the corner office, closing the door. My phone rang 5 minutes later. It was the chair of the board's assistant, looking for the preliminary quarterly numbers. Usually I send them a pre-read file that I assemble manually because the automated system hasn't worked since 2018. "Hi, Susan," the assistant said. "Just checking on those Q3 prelims?" I looked at the file on my desktop named Q3 Consolidated Actual Do Not Delete XLSX. It was finished. It was perfect. It contained corrections for 3 different departments that had formatted their data as text instead of currency. I right-clicked the file. I selected Properties. I unchecked Read Only. "I'm sorry," I told the assistant, my voice dripping with polite confusion. "I've been informed by the new director of strategic planning that I don't contribute to that process. You'll have to ask Tyler. I believe he's innovating the numbers as we speak." There was a long silence on the other end. "Okay," she said, sounding confused. "I'll call him." I hung up. I took a sip of my lukewarm water. It tasted like victory. The clock on the wall ticked over to 9:15 a.m. The war had started, and they didn't even know they were on the battlefield yet. There's a specific kind of silence that falls over a workspace when you stop doing the things you aren't paid to do. It's not an immediate silence. It's more like the eerie quiet of a forest right before a thunderstorm breaks. For the rest of that week, I became the ghost they accused me of being. I showed up at exactly 8:30 a.m. I took my full, legally mandated 1-hour lunch break away from my desk, something I hadn't done since the Bush administration. And at 5 p.m. on the dot, I packed my bag and walked out the door. The first crack in the dam appeared on Wednesday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, meticulously formatting a font size on a memo nobody would read, when Mark from sales walked up. Mark is a nice guy, but he thinks Excel is a type of energy drink. "Hey, Susan," Mark said, leaning on my cubicle wall. "Quick question. I'm trying to input the commission data for the Midwest region, but the dashboard is giving me that weird error again. The one with the spinning red circle? Usually you just do the thing with the code." He made wiggle fingers in the air, mimicking typing. "In the past, literally 2 days ago, I would have sighed, logged into the backend, cleared the cache in the SQL server that gets clogged every time Mark uploads a CSV file with commas in the wrong place. Fixed it in 3 minutes." I looked up at Mark. I gave him my best customer service smile. "Oh, that sounds frustrating, Mark," I said. "But Tyler is handling all strategic processes now. I'm just a caretaker. I wouldn't want to interfere with the new protocols." Mark blinked. "But Tyler doesn't know how to clear the cache. I'm sure he'll figure it out," I said cheerfully. "He has an MBA. Mark stared at me for a long moment. He saw the dead look in my eyes. He nodded slowly, backed away, and walked toward Tyler's office. 10 minutes later, I heard Tyler's voice booming. "Just reboot it. Have you tried rebooting it? Why is everyone so incompetent today?" I took a sip of tea, Earl Grey hot. By Thursday, the cracks were widening. The finance dashboard, a Frankenstein's monster of code I had cobbled together over 5 years, relied on a daily manual patch I ran every morning at 8:45 a.m. It was a simple script, really. Just a few lines of Python that told the database to ignore the fact that the inventory system and the billing system were speaking 2 different languages. I didn't run the script on Thursday. At 10 a.m., the accounts payable director, a woman named Linda who communicated exclusively in bold red font, stormed out of her office. "Why are the vendor payments showing up as 0? She shrieked. "Why does the system say we owe General Electric $0? We owe them $4 million, the office murmured. Heads peeked over cubicle walls like prairie dogs sensing a predator. Tyler came out of his office looking slightly less gelled than usual. He was holding a tablet that was clearly not connected to the network. "It's a glitch," Tyler announced, waving his hand dismissively. "IT is working on it, probably a server latency issue." I kept typing. Clack, 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 I was typing a grocery list. Tyler marched over to my desk. He smelled of expensive cologne and stress sweat. "Susan," he hissed, "do you know why the AP module is down?" I stopped typing. I looked at him over the rim of my glasses. I assume it's because the legacy patch wasn't applied. But as you pointed out, my workflows are archaic. I assumed you had implemented a modern solution. Tyler's jaw worked. He wanted to scream at me. He wanted to demand I fix it. But he had spent the last 48 hours telling the entire executive team that he was overhauling the department's sluggish legacy systems. If he admitted he needed me to run a script he didn't understand, he'd look like a fool. "Right," he said, his voice tight. "Right. We're migrating to the cloud anyway. This is just temporary friction." "Friction," I repeated. "That's a good word for it." He stormed off. I watched him go into the server room. A few minutes later, the IT guy, Dave, walked out shaking his head. Dave caught my eye. Dave knew. Dave and I had shared war stories in the elevator about the server architecture. He gave me a tiny, imperceptible nod. He wasn't going to tell Tyler about the Python script either. Friday was the deadline for the preliminary board deck. Usually, this is the time I start sweating. I usually spend Thursday night correcting the variance analysis because the department heads always confuse budget with forecast. I usually smooth out the graphs so the trend lines don't look like a heart attack victim's EKG. This Friday, I was calm. I had done exactly what was asked of me. I entered my data, only my data. I didn't check the other tabs. I didn't correct the formulas in the summary sheet. At 3 p.m., Tyler sent an email to the entire department. Subject, Q3 report finalized team, great work. I've compiled the final report. We're sending this to the board for review over the weekend. This is what efficiency looks like. Attached was the Excel file. I opened it. It was a bloodbath. The cash flow tab was referencing a cell that didn't exist. The EBITDA calculation was double counting the tax credits because someone, probably Tyler, had hard-coded a positive integer where a negative one should be. And most beautifully, the executive summary pivot table was blank. Just a gray box. I stared at the screen. It was like watching a car drive off a cliff, but the car was made of money and the cliff was my company's reputation. I could have fixed it. I could have hit reply all and said, hey, row 45 is broken and you forgot the amortization schedule. It would have taken me 10 minutes. Instead, I closed the file. I opened my email client. I created a new folder named the Tyler Era and dragged the email into it. Then, for the first time in 7 years, I left the office at 4:58 p.m. As I walked to the elevator, I saw Tyler in his glass office, feet up on the desk, laughing into his phone. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. He didn't realize the castle was built on a sinkhole, and I had just stopped holding up the floor. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The weekend had passed in a blur of relaxation I wasn't used to. I'd actually gone to a farmer's market. I bought artisanal jam. I didn't check my work email once. It felt illicit, like I was cheating on my anxiety. When I walked into the office, the air was thick enough to chew. The silence from the previous week was gone, replaced by the frantic murmuring of people who know something is wrong but don't know who to blame yet. The quarterly reports, the ones Tyler had so proudly blasted out on Friday, had populated into the global system over the weekend. And now the dashboards were lighting up, but not in the good way. I sat at my desk and unlocked my computer. My inbox was flashing. 47 unread messages. That was low for Monday, which meant the people who usually asked me for help were either trying to solve it themselves or were too afraid to ask. I opened the main dashboard. The first thing I saw was the revenue by region chart. The East Coast bar was towering, reaching into the trillions. The West Coast was showing negative revenue, which, unless we had started paying customers to take our product, was impossible. It's a glitch. Tyler's voice rang out from the conference room. The door was open. He was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. I'm telling you, it's a display error. The underlying data is solid. I audited it myself. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bad office coffee, burnt and acidic, but today it tasted like nectar. Audited it himself, I whispered to my monitor. He highlighted the cells yellow. That's not an audit, Tyler. That's coloring. My desk phone rang. It was Brenda from Analytics. Brenda is one of the good ones, sharp, cynical. And tired? Susan, she whispered. She sounded like she was hiding under a desk. Are you seeing this? Seeing what, Brenda? I asked, keeping my voice loud enough for the passersby to hear. I'm just focused on my personal tasks today. The COGS calculation, Brenda hissed. Cost of goods sold. It's dividing by zero, Susan. The entire manufacturing tab is just hash div/0. Errors all the way down. I traced the formula. It's linking to a file on Tyler's desktop. A file we don't have access to. I suppressed a smile. Of course it was. Tyler had probably linked the master sheet to a local spreadsheet on his laptop, thinking it would update dynamically for everyone else. It's the rookie mistake to end all rookie mistakes. That sounds like an IT permission issue, I said smoothly. Have you tried putting in a ticket? Susan, Brenda pleaded. You know how to fix this. You just change the reference path to the shared drive. It takes 3 seconds, please. The director of operations is breathing down my neck. I felt a twinge of guilt. Brenda didn't deserve this. But if I fixed it for Brenda, Tyler would take credit for the quick resolution. He would learn nothing, and nothing would change. I really can't, Brenda, I said, my voice dropping to a sympathetic coo. Tyler was very specific. He's re-engineering the workflow. If I touch the reference paths, I might break his new proprietary model. I can't take that risk. You know how the VP is about insubordination. There was a pause. Brenda understood. Okay, she said, her voice hardening. I get it, proprietary model. I'll let operations know we're waiting on Tyler's local file. She hung up. By noon, the chaos had spread to the executive floor. The VP, Tyler's dad, came storming down the stairs. He rarely took the stairs. He looked red-faced. He marched straight into Tyler's office. Through the glass walls, we could see the pantomime of a family argument disguised as a business meeting. Tyler was gesturing wildly at his laptop. The VP was pointing a finger at the screen. Then they both looked at me. I didn't look up. I was busy alphabetizing my desktop icons. The VP came out, followed by Tyler. They walked over to my desk. Susan, the VP said. He sounded breathless. We have a small technical hiccup. The dashboard isn't pulling the manufacturing data correctly. Oh no, I said, widening my eyes. That's terrible. Tyler seems to think that the old system you built is conflicting with his new inputs, the VP said. He was trying to sound authoritative, but I could hear the desperation. We need you to take a look. Just smooth it out. This was it. The moment they dragged me back in. The moment I was supposed to say move over, and fix their mess so they could go back to ignoring me. But I remembered the look on Tyler's face when he called my work archaic. I remembered the 7:30 p.m. Fridays. I'd love to help, I said, and I meant it. I would love to help if I were a valued employee. But I don't have admin access to Tyler's laptop. If the data is hosted locally on his machine, as it appears to be, my archaic system can't reach it. It's a security protocol. I'm sure you remember approving it last year. The VP blinked. He didn't remember. He never read the security protocols. Well, can't you just override it? Tyler asked, annoyed. Just hack it or whatever. Hack it, I repeated. Tyler, I'm an analyst, not a character in the Matrix. I can't hack your C drive. You'll need to upload the source file to the shared server, map the permissions, and rerun the batch script. But you'll have to be careful. If the column headers don't match exactly, it will corrupt the historical database. This was technically true, but phrased in the most terrifying way possible. Tyler went pale. Corrupt the database? Permanently, I lied. The VP looked at his son, then he looked at his watch. Fix it, Tyler, the VP snapped. Just figure it out. We have investors checking these numbers tomorrow. The VP walked away. Tyler stood there, staring at me. You're enjoying this, he whispered. I'm not enjoying anything, Tyler, I said, turning back to my screen. I'm just doing my job, which, according to you, is absolutely nothing. He stomped back to his office. I saw him Googling furiously. I could see the reflection in the glass. He was searching how to link Excel to shared drive without breaking database. Good luck, Tyler. Desperation is a powerful motivator. Unfortunately for Tyler, desperation combined with incompetence is just a recipe for acceleration into a brick wall. By Tuesday afternoon, Tyler had realized he couldn't fix the automated dashboard. The glitch was beyond his understanding because he didn't understand the underlying architecture of the data. He didn't know that Sales Final was actually a dummy column, and Sales Final V2 was the real one. He didn't know about the hidden rows that calculated tax variances. So, he did what every arrogant middle manager does when technology fails them. He threw bodies at the problem. Everyone, stop what you're doing. Tyler shouted at 1:00 p.m. He clapped his hands again. I was starting to develop a Pavlovian twitch of hatred for that sound. The system is down because of legacy issues, he announced, glaring in my direction. So we're going manual. I want everyone to open a blank sheet. Are going to rebuild the quarterly report from the raw invoices. We're doing this the old-fashioned way. Hard work, grunt work. Let's show the board what we're made of. A collective groan rippled through the bullpen. Rebuilding the report from raw invoices was like trying to rebuild a skyscraper by stacking individual bricks without mortar. It wasn't just inefficient, it was insane. He assigned sections to the junior analysts. Kevin, you take revenue. Sarah, you take expenses. Mike, you take payroll. He didn't assign anything to me. I was the legacy issue. I watched in silence as the chaos unfolded. The juniors were frantic. They were pulling PDF invoices, typing numbers into cells, making typos, correcting them, making new typos. The sound of typing was like a hailstorm. But here is the thing about raw manual entry. It lacks guardrails. My automated system, the one Tyler had abandoned, had built-in logic checks. If you tried to enter an expense that violated the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, compliance rules, the cell would turn red and scream at you. If you tried to book revenue before the contract was signed, the system would block you. These kids were just typing numbers. I watched Sarah, a sweet girl fresh out of college, typing in the entertainment expenses. She was moving fast, trying to impress Tyler. I saw her pick up a stack of receipts from the VP's discretionary pile. I knew that pile. It contained dinners that were technically personal but expensed as client development. My system usually flagged these for manual review. Sarah just typed them in. $4,500 steakhouse. $2,000 golf club. Tyler was pacing behind them, acting like a drill sergeant. Faster, people. We need to merge these by 5:00 p.m. At 4:30 p.m., Tyler shouted, send me your sheets. He sat at his desk and began copying and pasting their work into a master file. I could see him on his screen. He wasn't checking formulas. He wasn't cross-referencing. He was just pasting values. Do you know what happens when you paste values without checking the formatting? You lose the audit trail. You lose the logic. You just have static numbers that say what you want them to say. At 5:15 p.m., Tyler stood up. He looked exhausted but triumphant. Done. He declared, printed and saved. I'm sending this to the board and the external auditors right now. He hit send. I heard the whoosh sound of the email leaving the building. I waited 1 minute. Then I opened my own email. I navigated to the sent items of the shared department inbox, which I still had access to because, again, nobody had revoked my permissions. I found the email. Subject, Q3 Final Financials Restated. Attached was the file, Q3 Master Manual Build XLSX. I downloaded it. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I saved a copy to my local drive. I renamed it Non-Compliant Final Submission Evidence XLSX. Then I opened it. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just bad math. It was illegal math. because they had manually entered the data, they had skipped the revenue recognition clause. They had booked revenue for contracts that weren't starting until Q4. That's a cardinal sin in accounting. It's fraud. It's go to jail fraud if you do it on purpose, and get fired immediately fraud if you do it by accident. And there, in the Approvals tab, was a digital signature. Approved by Tyler, last name Director of Strategic Planning. He hadn't even asked legal to review it. He was so desperate to prove he could fix the glitch that he had bypassed the one step that could have saved him. I stared at the screen. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a cold, hard adrenaline. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. This was a smoking gun. I closed the file. I didn't say a word. I picked up my purse. "Good night, everyone," I called out cheerfully. Tyler looked up from his desk. He was loosening his tie. "Head down, Susan. You just did in 4 hours what takes you a week." "I'm very impressed," I said, and I walked out into the cool evening air, knowing that Tyler had just handed me the match, the gasoline, and the insurance policy all in one attachment. The thing about external auditors is that they don't care about your office politics. They don't care who your dad is. They care about numbers and they care about liability. They are the sharks that eat the other sharks. Wednesday morning. The bomb dropped, but it didn't explode immediately. It ticked. It started with an email from Deloitte, not a generic notification, but a direct inquiry from the senior audit partner. Let's call him Roger. I've met Roger. Roger has the personality of a calculus textbook and eyes that can spot a misplaced decimal from orbit. The email went to Tyler, the VP, and the CFO. Because I was still listed as the primary contact for historical data, I was CC'd. From Roger, Deloitte, subject, urgent, Q3 compliance irregularities / clause 6.3. Dear team, we have begun our preliminary review of the Q3 file submitted yesterday evening. We have flagged several material inconsistencies regarding revenue recognition thresholds. Specifically, $1.2 million in projected revenue appears to be booked as current assets without corresponding signed POs. Furthermore, executive discretionary expense line item exceeds the threshold by 400% and lacks the required itemized breakdown mandated by your internal policy section 4B. Please clarify immediately. If these figures are accurate, we will need to file a formal disclosure regarding material weakness in internal controls. Regards, Roger. I read the email while eating a bagel. Material weakness in internal controls. In the finance world, those are fighting words. That's the kind of phrase that gets stock trading suspended. I waited. I knew what was coming. 10 minutes later, Tyler appeared at my desk. He wasn't strutting today. He was speed walking. He held a printout of the email. "Susan," he said, dropping the paper on my desk. "What is this?" I looked at the paper, then at him. "It appears to be an email from the auditors, Tyler." "I know what it is," he snapped. "I mean, what is this clause 6.3? Why are they flagging revenue? We entered the numbers exactly off the invoices." "Ah," I said, leaning back. "Well, clause 6.3 refers to the revenue recognition principle. You can't book the money until the service is delivered, even if you have the invoice. My system, the archaic one, used to automatically filter those out based on the service dates." Tyler's face went slack. "It filtered them out?" "Yes," I said gently, "because booking them early is technically—" "Well, it's fraud, Tyler." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "Well, fix it," he demanded. "Just email Roger and tell him it's a clerical error. Tell him you sent the wrong file." I paused. The air in the office seemed to freeze. "Tyler," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "I didn't send the file. You did. Your digital signature is on the cover page." He stared at me. He realized the trap he was in. If he admitted he didn't know the rules, he looked incompetent. If he blamed me, the metadata would prove him a liar. "I'm instructing you to handle this," he hissed. "You're the senior analyst. This is your job. Fix the numbers, resend the file, and smooth it over with Roger. Now." He turned to walk away, confident that his order was enough, but I wasn't done. I opened a new email. I addressed it to Roger. I CC'd Tyler, the VP, the CFO, and for good measure, the company's general counsel, legal department. Subject, urgent. Q3 compliance irregularities. Dear Roger, thank you for catching this. I have been asked by the Director of Strategic Planning, Tyler, to address these discrepancies. Unfortunately, I did not prepare, review, or submit the Q3 file in question. As of last Tuesday, I was instructed that my previous workflows were archaic and that I should not contribute to the new strategic reporting process. The file submitted was created manually by the team under Tyler's direct supervision. I do not have access to the source data used for this manual build, so I cannot validate or fix the numbers as requested. I defer to Tyler for the methodology used. Best, Susan. I hovered my mouse over the send button. I looked at Tyler, who was back in his office, frantically typing on his phone. I clicked send. The fallout was almost instantaneous. Within 3 minutes, the general counsel replied, "Stop all communications. Internal freeze on financial docs. Meeting in the boardroom." 10 mins. Tyler's phone rang. He looked at it, then looked at me through the glass. His face was the color of dirty snow. I smiled at him. A small, polite, terrifying smile. "You wanted to innovate, Tyler. You wanted to disrupt. Well, congratulations. Consider us disrupted. The boardroom meeting was closed door, but glass walls are a double-edged sword. They let you feel important when things are going well, and they put you on display like a zoo animal when you're being dissected. I watched from my desk. The VP, Tyler's dad, the CFO, the general counsel, and Tyler were all in there. There was a lot of arm waving. The VP was yelling. I could see the veins in his neck. Tyler was slumped in his chair, looking like a child who had broken a vase. My phone rang. It was the CFO's direct line. Susan. CFO said. His voice was tight, controlled panic. Can you come in here now? Certainly, I said. I grabbed my notepad. I grabbed the folder I had prepared. I walked into the boardroom. The silence was heavy. The air smelled of dry cleaning and fear. Susan, the VP started, his tone trying to be fatherly but landing somewhere near hostage negotiator. We have a situation. It seems there was a miscommunication regarding the report protocols. Tyler was under the impression you were reviewing his work. I looked at Tyler. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That's an interesting impression, I said calmly. Considering he told the entire department in front of witnesses that I don't contribute anything and that my work was archaic. The general counsel, a sharp woman named Veronica, looked up from her notes. He said that? He did, I said, and I respected his authority. I stepped back. Okay, the CFO interrupted. Point taken, but Susan, we are in a bind. Roger is threatening to qualify his audit opinion. We have the investor call tomorrow. We need you to fix the file. We need the real numbers. Do you have them? This was the pivot point. They were asking me to save them. If I said yes, I went back to being the invisible fixer. I'd be the janitor cleaning up the mess, and next week they'd forget I ever did it. I don't have the manual file Tyler created, I said slowly. Don't know what invoices he used. But you have your system, the VP pleaded. The legacy system, can't you just run it? I could, I said, but the legacy system requires a data inputs patch that hasn't been run in 10 days. It would take me at least 48 hours to reconcile the backlog. We don't have 48 hours, Tyler snapped. He suddenly found his voice. We have 12. You're sabotaging us on purpose. I turned to him. Sabotage, Tyler. You deleted the macros. You overwrote the validation rules. I checked the metadata on your submission file. I placed a piece of paper on the table. It was a screenshot of the file properties from the non-compliant final submission evidence XLSX file. See here, I pointed. Creation time, 4:45 p.m. Tuesday. Author, Tyler. Modification? None. You didn't even open the compliance check tab before you sent it, if you had. Would have seen the red warning lights. Tyler stared at the paper. There's a compliance check tab? He whispered. Yes, I said. It was hidden because the junior analysts get confused by it, but any director would know how to unhide a sheet in Excel. The room went silent again. The incompetence was laid bare on the mahogany table. It wasn't just a mistake, it was laziness. Veronica, the general counsel, took off her glasses. If we present these numbers to the investors tomorrow, she said, and they are wrong, we are looking at an SEC investigation. If we don't present numbers, the stock tanks. She looked at me. Susan, she said, what is the third option? The third option, I said, is that you let me do my job. My actual job, not as a caretaker, but as the lead controller for this project. I need full admin access restored immediately. I need Tyler out of the system so he doesn't overwrite anything else. I need it in writing that I am cleaning up his mess. The VP bristled. Now, Susan, there's no need to make this about titles. It's not about titles, I said sharply. It's about liability. If I touch that file, I own it. And I'm not owning a file that has Tyler's fingerprints on it unless I have a paper trail that says I'm the cleaner, not the creator. The CFO looked at the VP. Do it. Give her the access. The VP looked at his son. Tyler looked defeated. Fine, the VP grunted. I'll need that in an email, I said. From you, copying HR, I stood up. I'll be at my desk, I said. I have a lot of work to do. I walked out. I didn't run. I didn't celebrate. I went to my desk, cracked my knuckles, and opened the real file, the one I had been secretly maintaining on my local drive for the last week, just in case. Because I'm not just a support beam. I'm the architect. I stayed until 3:00 a.m. I didn't mind. There was a rhythm to the work when I didn't have to fight incompetence at every turn. I scrubbed the data. I reconciled the accounts. I produced a Q3 report that was accurate, compliant, and unfortunately for the company, showed the true cost of Tyler's strategic initiatives, mostly wasted consulting fees. The next morning, the investor call was scheduled for 10:00 a.m. This wasn't just a conference call. It was a video summit with the major stakeholders. The lead investor was a man named Mr. Sterling. He represented the private equity firm that owned 40% of us. He was a man who smiled rarely and blinked even less. I wasn't invited to the meeting. I was just the mechanic who had fixed the engine. I sat at my desk, listening to the audio feed that was broadcast to the senior staff. Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Sterling's voice came through the speakers, smooth like gravel under tires. I've reviewed the revised deck you sent over at 4:00 a.m. It looks significantly different from the version we saw 2 days ago. Yes, the VP's voice. He sounded tired. We found a clerical error in the initial data pull. We wanted to ensure absolute accuracy, so we restated the figures. A clerical error, Sterling repeated. That shifted the EBITDA by $3 million. It was a complex consolidation issue. Tyler chimed in. He sounded shaky, but he was trying to spin it. We're transitioning to a new dynamic reporting model. Growing pains. You know how it is with technology. Technology, Sterling said. His tone was flat, interesting. Because the metadata on this new file, the accurate one, says it was authored by Susan M. The previous file, the one with the illegal revenue recognition, was authored by Tyler VP's son. Silence on the line. I froze. Mr. Sterling checked metadata. God bless him. I want to understand, Sterling continued, his voice dropping an octave. Why is the dynamic reporting model producing fraud while Susan M. is producing accurate GOP financials? Who is leading this department? I am, the VP said quickly. Tyler is my director of strategy. And Susan? Sterling asked. She's a senior analyst, the VP stammered. She supports the team. Bring her in, Sterling said. Excuse me. Bring her into the room, Sterling commanded. Now, I want to hear from the person who actually knows how the money works. The door to the boardroom opened. The CFO's assistant ran out, looking pale. Susan, she squeaked. They want you inside. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. I grabbed my folder, my reveal folder. It contained the emails, the logs, the screenshots, and the time-stamped rejection of my archaic advice. I walked into the boardroom. The camera was on the big screen. Mr. Sterling's face was 10 feet tall. This is Susan, the VP said, gesturing to me. He wouldn't look at me. Hello, Susan, Sterling said. Good morning, Mr. Sterling, I said. I stood behind the empty chair at the end of the table. Did you write the report we received this morning? He asked. I did, I said. And why wasn't this the report we received 2 days ago? I looked at Tyler. He was sweating profusely. He looked like he was about to throw up. I could have buried him right there. I could have screamed. But that's not how you win in corporate America. You win with precision. There was a strategic decision, I said carefully, to explore a new manual workflow led by the Director of Strategic Planning. I was instructed to step back from the process to allow for this innovation. When the output of that process proved non-compliant, I was asked to step back in and restore the integrity of the data. Instructed to step back? Sterling asked. By whom? I didn't say a name. I just let my eyes drift very clearly to Tyler. Sterling followed my gaze, then he looked at the VP. So, Sterling said, you sidelined your most competent asset to let a junior director play with the numbers, and you almost triggered an SEC violation. It was a misunderstanding of roles, the VP tried to say. Looks like a misunderstanding of talent, Sterling corrected. Susan, sit down. I sat down. Walk us through the variances, Sterling said to me. I want to know exactly where the money went, and for the next hour I ran the meeting. I explained the numbers. I answered every question without looking at a note. I dismantled Tyler's strategy line item by line item, showing exactly where the waste was. I didn't have to insult him. The numbers insulted him for me. When the screen went black, ending the call with Mr. Sterling, the room didn't exhale, it suffocated. The VP sat with his head in his hands. Tyler was staring at the table, his face a mask of shock. The CFO was looking at me with a mixture of awe and fear. Well, the general counsel, Veronica said, breaking the silence, that was illuminating. He humiliated us, the VP muttered. He looked up, his eyes darting to me. You hung us out to dry, Susan. You made it sound like we're incompetent. I answered the questions truthfully, I said. Would you have preferred I lied to the lead investor? Because I believe that's what got us into this mess on Tuesday. You could have softened it, Tyler snapped. You didn't have to mention the manual workflow. You could have said it was a software bug. I reached for my folder, the reveal folder. Tyler, I said, opening it. I think it's time we stop pretending this was a software bug. I slid a stack of papers across the mahogany table. They fanned out perfectly. What is this? The CFO asked, picking up the top sheet. That, I said, is a log of every interaction regarding this report. Here is the email from last Tuesday where Tyler stated, I don't contribute anything. Here is the IT ticket where he requested admin access to overwrite the compliance macros. Here is the timestamp of when he rejected Brenda's warning about the hash div/0 errors. I pointed to a graph I had printed out. It showed the error rate in the system. It was a flat line for 7 years, my years. Then, last Tuesday, it spiked vertically like a rocket launch. And here, I said, tapping the final document, is the side-by-side comparison of the Tyler version vs. the GOP version. The Tyler version overstates revenue by 12% and understates expenses by 8%. That's a 20% variance. In our industry, that's not a mistake, that's negligence. Veronica picked up the comparison. She adjusted her glasses. Jesus, she whispered, if we had published this, we'd be delisted. She looked at the VP. Did you know about this? She asked him. Did you know he was bypassing the controls? I trusted his judgment, the VP stammered. He has an MBA. I don't care if he has a Nobel Prize. Veronica slammed the paper down. He almost torched the company. And you, she looked at me, you let it happen. I didn't let it happen, I corrected her, my voice turning icy. I was ordered to stand down. I have the email from HR acknowledging the change in my duties per Tyler's request. I followed the chain of command. I let you drive the car. I can't help it if you drove it into a wall after I told you the brakes were cut. The CFO nodded slowly. He saw the legal reality. I was bulletproof. I had documented everything. She's right, the CFO said. She's the only reason we survived that call just now. Sterling likes her. Sterling likes competence, I said. And right now this room is very short on it. Tyler stood up. I'm not sitting here and listening to this insubordinate. Sit down, Tyler. CFO barked. It was the first time I'd ever heard him raise his voice. Tyler sat. We have a problem, the CFO addressed the room. Sterling is going to ask for a follow-up next week. He's going to want to see the new controls. If Tyler is still the director of strategy, Sterling is going to pull his funding. The VP looked at his son. He looked at his pension. He made a calculation. We can reassign him, the VP said weakly. Special projects, no. Veronica said. He signed the fraudulent report. He's a liability. She turned to me. Susan, she said, what would it take to fix the department? Permanently, I looked at them. The powerful men who had ignored me for a decade. Now they were begging. I want the interim controller title, I said. I want the salary that comes with it, retroactive to the beginning of the quarter. And I want full hiring and firing authority for the analyst team. No more nepotism hires. No more innovators who don't know how to use a VLOOKUP. Done, the CFO said immediately. And I added, looking at Tyler, I want my office back, the corner one, the one Tyler is in. Tyler packed his box at 4:00 p.m. It's amazing how little of a footprint a loud person actually leaves. He had been there for 3 months, caused millions of dollars in potential damages, and yet, all his belongings fit into a single cardboard box. A stress ball, a framed photo of himself on a boat, a coffee mug that said hustle. The office was quiet as he walked out. Nobody laughed, nobody jeered, we just watched. It was the silence of the immune system expelling a virus. The VP, his father, didn't come out to say goodbye. He was in a closed-door meeting with HR, fighting for his own survival. Rumor was he'd be taking an early retirement by the end of the month. I stood in the doorway of my new office. Glass corner office. It still smelled like Tyler's cologne, but I'd opened the window to let the fresh Missouri air in. The CFO walked by. He stopped and leaned in. You played a hard game, Susan, he said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded respectful. I didn't play a game, I said. I just stopped playing yours. He nodded. Sterling sent an email. He wants you on the Q4 planning committee. He specifically asked for the woman who knows the metadata. Tell him I'm available, I said. Good, the CFO said. He paused. You know, you could have stopped Tyler earlier, before the audit email. I could have, I admitted, but then you never would have seen the difference between value and volume. You needed to see the crash to appreciate the safety features. He chuckled dryly and walked away. I sat down in the leather chair. It was comfortable. I pulled up the dashboard on my dual monitors. I opened the admin panel. I reactivated my old Python scripts. I relinked the shared drives. I turned the compliance macros back on. Across the floor, I heard the faint ping of notifications hitting inboxes. Hey, Mark from sales shouted from his cubicle. The dashboard works. The red circle is gone. Mine too, Brenda called out. The hash div/0 error is gone. It's showing the correct margin. A wave of relief washed over the finance floor. The machine was humming again. Numbers were right. The world made sense. I saw a file on the desktop that Tyler had left behind. It was labeled Strategic Vision V1, DocX. I dragged it to the trash bin, then I right-clicked the trash bin. Empty trash? I clicked yes. I leaned back, taking a sip of my tea. The sun was setting over the parking lot, casting a long, golden light across the gray carpet. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was the structural integrity. And for the first time in 7 years, the structure was sound. Next time, they'll check the metadata. But I have a feeling there won't be a next time. Not on my watch. Funny how the ones doing the least are always the loudest. They had no idea the quiet woman they mocked was the one holding the whole operation together. And when she stopped, everything collapsed exactly as it should have. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.